The alarm clock buzzed at 4:30 a.m., just like it had every morning for the past 3 years. Lucy rolled out of bed and looked at herself in the cracked bathroom mirror. Dark circles under her eyes told the story of another sleepless night worrying about rent money. She splashed cold water on her face and tied her brown hair back in a simple ponytail. Another day at Rosie's diner was about to begin. Lucy had never planned to become a waitress. After high school, she dreamed of going to college, maybe becoming a teacher. But life had other plans. Her mom got sick, medical bills piled up, and college became a distant dream. Now at 25, she was still pouring coffee and wiping down tables at the only diner in Millfield, a small town where nothing exciting ever happened. The morning air was crisp as she walked the 6 blocks to work. October in Millfield meant the leaves were turning golden, and there was a bite in the air that warned winter was coming. Lucy pulled her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders. She needed a new coat, but that would have to wait until she could pay off her credit card. Rosie's diner sat on the corner of Main Street and Highway 9. It wasn't much to look at: faded red paint, a flickering neon sign that said open 24 hours, and windows that needed a good cleaning. But it was home to truckers passing through and locals who had been coming here for decades. Lucy knew every regular customer by name and how they liked their coffee. She unlocked the front door and flipped on the lights. The familiar smell of old coffee and cleaning supplies greeted her. Lucy had opened the diner alone every Tuesday for the past year, ever since old Bill retired and moved to Florida. She liked the quiet morning hours before the rush began. It gave her time to think and prepare for the day. By 6 a.m., Lucy had the coffee brewing and the grill warming up. The first customers would arrive soon, mostly construction workers grabbing breakfast before heading to job sites. She wiped down the red vinyl booths and made sure each table had enough sugar packets and napkins. The door chimed as the first customer walked in. It was Pete, a regular who worked at the hardware store. "Morning, Lucy, the usual?" "You got it, Pete. 2 eggs over easy, wheat toast, and black coffee." Lucy smiled and poured his coffee before he even sat down. These small interactions made her day brighter. The morning rush came and went. By 9 a.m., the diner had emptied out except for Mrs. Henderson, who came in every Tuesday to read the newspaper and drink tea. Lucy was restocking the sugar dispensers when she heard the door chime again. She looked up and saw a small figure standing by the entrance. It was a boy, maybe 10 years old, wearing clothes that were clearly too big for him. His jeans were rolled up at the bottom and his gray sweater hung loose on his thin frame. He stood perfectly still, looking around the diner with wide, cautious eyes. "Well, hello there," Lucy said gently, walking over with a menu. "Table for one?" The boy nodded but didn't speak. Lucy noticed his sneakers had holes in them, and his dark hair looked like it had been cut with kitchen scissors. But what struck her most were his eyes. They were old eyes in a young face, like he had seen things no child should see. "Right this way, sweetie." Lucy led him to a corner booth where he could see the whole diner. The boy slid into the seat and kept his hands folded on the table. Lucy placed the menu in front of him, but he barely glanced at it. "Can I get you something to drink? Maybe some orange juice?" Lucy asked with her warmest smile. The boy shook his head and pointed to the water glasses. Lucy filled one with ice water and set it down. "Take your time looking at the menu. No rush at all." She watched him from behind the counter. The boy studied the menu like he was solving a math problem. His finger traced down the prices, and Lucy could see him counting in his head. Finally, he pointed to the cheapest item on the breakfast menu, a single slice of toast for 99 cents. "Just toast?" Lucy asked. "Are you sure? We have really good pancakes, and the eggs are fresh from Murphy's farm just outside town." The boy nodded firmly and reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small cloth pouch that had seen better days. Lucy watched as he carefully counted out coins on the table, mostly pennies and nickels with a few dimes mixed in. He counted twice to make sure he had enough, then pushed the exact change toward her. Lucy's heart squeezed in her chest. She had seen tough times, but this child was clearly struggling more than anyone should. "One slice of toast coming right up," she said, scooping up the coins. In the kitchen, Lucy dropped 2 slices of bread in the toaster. While she waited, she looked through the small window at the boy. He sat perfectly still, his water glass cupped in both hands like he was warming them. He didn't fidget or look around impatiently like most kids would. He just waited quietly, grateful for a warm place to sit. When the toast popped up, Lucy buttered it carefully and added a small pat of strawberry jam on the side. She placed it on her nicest plate, the white one with the tiny blue flowers that Rosie had bought when the diner first opened. "Here you go, honey," she said, setting the plate down. The boy's eyes widened slightly when he saw the jam. He looked up at Lucy with a question in his eyes. "Oh, that's just a little something extra." "No charge," Lucy said with a wink. "I think the jam was about to go bad anyway." The boy gave her the smallest smile Lucy had ever seen, but it was genuine. He ate the toast slowly, making each bite last. He used his finger to get every bit of jam from the plate, then sipped his water to make it last longer. For the next hour, the boy sat in that booth. He didn't ask for anything else or cause any trouble. He just sat quietly, like he was grateful for a safe place to be. Mrs. Henderson finished her tea and left, leaving just Lucy and the boy in the diner. "Where do you live, sweetheart?" Lucy asked when she came to refill his water glass. The boy pointed out the window toward the edge of town but didn't speak. Lucy had lived in Millfield her whole life, and she knew what was out that way. Mostly trailer parks and rundown houses where people lived when they couldn't afford anywhere else. "Do you go to school around here?" She tried again. The boy nodded but still didn't speak. Lucy began to wonder if maybe he couldn't talk or maybe he just didn't want to. Either way, something told her not to push. When lunch customers started arriving, the boy stood up and walked toward the door. He turned back once and gave Lucy a small wave. She waved back, watching until he disappeared down the street. For the rest of the day, Lucy couldn't stop thinking about him. Something about that quiet, dignified little boy had touched her heart in a way she couldn't explain. She found herself hoping he would come back and wondering if he had enough to eat at home. That night, as Lucy walked home in the dark, she made a decision. If that boy came back, she was going to make sure he got a proper meal, even if she had to pay for it herself. 3 days passed before Lucy saw the boy again. She found herself looking toward the door every time the bell chimed, hoping to see that small figure in oversized clothes. When Thursday morning came and went without him, she felt disappointed in a way that surprised her. Friday arrived gray and drizzly. Lucy was wiping down tables when the door opened at exactly 9:15 a.m. Her heart lifted when she saw the boy step inside, shaking raindrops from his thin jacket. He wore the same clothes as before, but this time they looked even more worn. "Well, look who's back," Lucy said warmly. "Your usual table?" The boy nodded and made his way to the same corner booth. Lucy noticed he walked carefully, like his shoes might fall apart if he moved too fast. She brought him a glass of water without being asked and waited while he studied the menu again. Just like before, he pointed to the toast and counted out exact change from his little cloth pouch. But this time, Lucy had a plan. "One slice of toast coming up," she said, heading to the kitchen. She put 2 pieces of bread in the toaster and waited. When they popped up, she buttered both slices and put one on a plate for the boy. The other slice she cut into triangles and arranged on a small side plate. "Here you go, sweetie," she said, setting down the main plate. Then, as if she had just remembered, she added, "Oh, and the cook made an extra piece by mistake. Can't let it go to waste." She placed the second plate next to the first. The boy looked up at her with those serious dark eyes. For a moment, Lucy thought he might refuse the extra food, but then his stomach growled loud enough for both of them to hear, and his cheeks turned pink with embarrassment. "It's okay, honey. Happens to all of us," Lucy said gently. "Go ahead and eat up." The boy ate both pieces of toast slowly, savoring every bite. Lucy pretended to be busy organizing the napkin dispensers, but she was really watching him. When he finished, he carefully wiped the plates clean with his finger and drank every drop of his water. This became their routine over the next 2 weeks. The boy would come in 3 or 4 times a week, always ordering just toast, always paying with exact change from his worn pouch, and Lucy would always find a reason to bring him extra food. Sometimes it was leftover pancakes that were about to get cold. Other times it was soup that the cook had accidentally made too much of. Once she brought him scrambled eggs, claiming a customer had ordered them over easy by mistake. The boy never spoke, but Lucy could see the gratitude in his eyes. He would look at her like she was performing magic, turning his simple toast into a real meal. And slowly, Lucy began to notice small changes. He would give her tiny smiles when she brought the extra food. He started wiping down his own table when he finished eating. Once she found him carefully stacking the sugar packets that had gotten scattered. Other customers began to notice too. Mrs. Henderson, who came in for tea every Tuesday, pulled Lucy aside one morning. "That little boy who comes in," she said quietly. "He's one of the Chen children, isn't he? Lives with his grandmother out in Sunset Trailer Park." Lucy's heart clenched. Sunset Trailer Park was the roughest area in town, where people lived when they had nowhere else to go. "Chen family?" she asked. "Sad story," Mrs. Henderson whispered. "The boy's parents died in that terrible car accident a couple years back. Remember? It was in the winter, roads were icy. Left him with his grandmother, poor woman. She's been struggling to make ends meet on her Social Security." Lucy felt her throat tighten. No wonder the boy was so thin, so quiet. No wonder he counted his pennies so carefully. She had wondered why he never spoke, and now she understood. Sometimes trauma could steal a person's voice, especially a child's. That afternoon, Lucy went to the grocery store after her shift. She bought ingredients for vegetable soup: carrots, celery, potatoes, and good chicken stock. If she was going to keep accidentally making extra food, she might as well make it nutritious. The next time the boy came in, Lucy was ready. She brought him his usual toast, then returned a few minutes later with a steaming bowl of soup. "You won't believe this," she said, shaking her head like she was frustrated. "I made way too much soup for the lunch special. My boss is going to be mad if I have to throw it out. Think you could help me out and eat some?" The boy's eyes widened as he looked at the soup. It was thick with vegetables and had real pieces of chicken floating in it. He looked up at Lucy with a question in his expression. "Please," Lucy said, sitting down across from him for a moment. "You'd really be helping me out. I hate waste." The boy nodded and picked up the spoon. The first taste made his eyes close with pleasure. Lucy had put extra salt and pepper in it, knowing that someone who survived on toast and water might crave more flavor. She watched him eat, pretending to read the newspaper but really making sure he finished every drop. As the weeks passed, Lucy got more creative with her mistakes. She would bring him fruit, claiming the shipment had too many apples that were getting soft. She started packing sandwiches, saying customers had changed their orders at the last minute. Once she brought him a slice of chocolate cake, insisting that it was the last piece and would have to be thrown out anyway. The boy never questioned these explanations, but Lucy could tell he was getting stronger. His cheeks filled out a little. His eyes became brighter. He started staying longer, sometimes helping her refill the salt shakers or organize the menus. Other customers started asking questions. Tom, who worked at the gas station down the street, mentioned seeing the boy walking to the diner early in the mornings. "That kid walks almost 2 miles to get here," Tom said. "Rain or shine. Must really like your cooking, Lucy." Lucy just smiled and refilled his coffee. She didn't tell him that she suspected the boy came to the diner not just for food, but for the warmth and safety it provided. She had noticed he seemed more relaxed here than anywhere else, like the diner was his refuge. One particularly cold morning in November, the boy arrived shivering. His thin jacket was soaked through, and Lucy could see he was trying hard not to let his teeth chatter. Without hesitation, she brought him hot chocolate along with his toast. "Kitchen made this by mistake," she said, though they both knew the diner didn't even serve hot chocolate. "Can't let it get cold." The boy wrapped his small hands around the warm mug and took careful sips. When he looked up at Lucy, his eyes were bright with tears he was trying to hold back. In that moment, Lucy knew that what she was doing was about more than food. She was giving this child something he desperately needed: kindness, consistency, and the feeling that someone cared whether he was okay. As she watched him slowly warm up, Lucy made a silent promise. No matter what it cost her, no matter what excuses she had to make, she would make sure this boy never went hungry. She just didn't know yet how much that promise would change both their lives. November brought the first real cold snap to Millfield, and with it, Lucy noticed the boy's visits becoming more frequent. What started as 3 times a week had turned into almost daily appearances. He would arrive each morning at exactly 9:15, like clockwork, wearing the same threadbare clothes that seemed to get thinner with each passing day. Lucy had started setting aside food specifically for him. In the mornings before her shift, she would make extra sandwiches at home and wrap them in clean dish towels. When the boy arrived, she would claim they were samples for a new menu item she was testing. "I need someone to try this turkey sandwich," she would say, setting it down beside his toast. "Tell me if it needs more mustard." The boy would nod seriously and eat the sandwich like he was conducting important research. Sometimes he would give her a thumbs up or shake his head slightly, playing along with the game they both knew was just pretense. Lucy treasured these small interactions. They were building something together, a language that didn't need words. As the days grew shorter and colder, Lucy began packing fruit in small bags. Apples, oranges, sometimes a banana. Things that would keep him healthy and give him energy for the long walk back to Sunset Trailer Park. She would hand them to him as he left, saying things like, "These are getting too ripe for the diner. Don't want them to go bad." The boy would tuck the fruit carefully into his jacket pocket, and Lucy would watch through the window as he walked away, her heart heavy with worry about what awaited him at home. One particularly cold Tuesday, the boy arrived with a new problem. His sneakers had completely given out. The sole of the left shoe was flapping loose, held on by what looked like duct tape. Lucy pretended not to notice, but inside she was planning her next move. That afternoon during her break, she walked to the thrift store on Maple Street. She found a pair of sturdy boots in the boy's size and a warm winter coat that looked like it would fit him. The boots cost $12 and the coat was $15, money she had been saving for her own winter coat. But she didn't hesitate. The next morning, she had them waiting in a shopping bag behind the counter. When the boy arrived and settled into his usual booth, Lucy brought his toast and then casually mentioned that someone had left the bag the day before. "Strangest thing," she said, shaking her head. "Someone left this bag here yesterday and never came back for it. I can't keep it forever, and I hate to just throw away perfectly good things. You don't suppose you could use any of this, could you?" The boy looked into the bag and his eyes widened. He pulled out the boots and turned them over in his hands, running his fingers along the sturdy soles. When he saw the coat, his bottom lip trembled slightly, and Lucy had to turn away to keep from crying herself. "I figure whoever left it would want them to go to someone who needed them," she said, pretending to clean the already clean counter. "What do you think?" The boy nodded emphatically and immediately started putting on the boots. They fit perfectly. The coat was a little big, but Lucy knew he would grow into it. For the first time since she had known him, he looked like a child who was properly dressed for winter. From that day forward, the boy started staying longer at the diner. He would finish his food and then quietly begin helping with small tasks around the restaurant. He would refill napkin dispensers, organize the sugar packets, and stack menus. He moved carefully and deliberately, like he was afraid of breaking something, but his help was genuine and appreciated. Other customers began to take notice. Pete from the hardware store asked Lucy one morning who the little helper was. Mrs. Henderson mentioned that she thought it was sweet, how the boy was learning the restaurant business. A few customers made comments about Lucy running a charity, but she ignored them completely. The truth was, Lucy was beginning to feel protective of the boy in a way that surprised her. When she saw him carefully wiping down tables with the two big coat sleeves rolled up to his elbows, something deep in her chest tightened with affection and concern. He reminded her of herself at that age, trying to be helpful, trying to earn her place in the world through hard work and good behavior. Lucy had grown up in a house where love was conditional, where she had to earn every bit of attention and affection she received. Her parents weren't cruel, but they were overwhelmed and distracted, working multiple jobs to keep the family afloat. Lucy had learned early that being useful was the best way to ensure she wouldn't be forgotten or pushed aside. Watching the boy stack sugar packets with such serious concentration, Lucy saw herself 20 years ago. She saw a child who was trying to make himself indispensable because he was afraid of being abandoned. The thought broke her heart and strengthened her resolve to make sure he felt valued just for being himself. As December arrived with its first snowfall, Lucy realized that the boy had become the best part of her day. His quiet presence made the diner feel more like home than her own apartment did. She found herself looking forward to their morning routine, his careful counting of coins, her creative explanations for extra food, the small smile he would give her when she brought him something special. She started keeping a mental calendar of his visits, worrying when he was even a few minutes late. On the days he didn't come, she would save food for him, just in case he showed up later. She learned his preferences. He liked grape jelly better than strawberry, preferred his soup with extra crackers, and always saved his fruit for last, eating it slowly like dessert. The other employees at the diner had stopped asking questions about Lucy's mistakes and leftovers. Even Bob, the grumpy afternoon cook, had started making extra portions without being asked. The whole staff had silently agreed to help feed this quiet child who had somehow become part of their daily routine. Then came a Monday morning in mid-December when everything changed. Snow had fallen heavily the night before, blanketing Millfield in 6 inches of white powder. Lucy arrived at work early, as always, and prepared for the morning rush. She made sure to have extra hot chocolate ready, knowing the boy would need something warm after his long walk through the snow. 15 came and went. No boy mind 30, still no sign of him. By 10 a.m., Lucy was genuinely worried. In all the weeks he had been coming to the diner, he had never missed a day without showing up the next morning to make up for it. She found herself going to the window every few minutes, looking down the snowy street for a small figure in a too-big coat. Tuesday arrived with more snow, and still no boy. Lucy barely slept that night, her mind racing with possibilities. Was he sick? Had something happened to his grandmother? Had they moved away without warning? By Wednesday morning, when the usual time came and went with no sign of him, Lucy knew something was seriously wrong. The empty corner booth seemed to mock her, and she found herself unable to concentrate on her work. She burned the first batch of bacon and dropped a full coffee pot, sending broken glass across the kitchen floor. She had no way to find him, no way to check if he was okay. She didn't even know his full name or exact address. All she knew was that somewhere out there, a child she had come to care for deeply was missing from her life, and she felt helpless to do anything about it. Little did Lucy know that within hours, her worry would turn to shock as the most unexpected visitors imaginable would arrive at Rosie's diner, bringing answers she never could have imagined. Thursday morning arrived with clear skies but no sign of the boy. Lucy went through the motions of preparing for the breakfast rush, but her heart wasn't in it. She kept glancing at the empty corner booth, wondering if she would ever see him again. Maybe his grandmother had finally managed to move them somewhere with better opportunities. Maybe they had family in another state. Maybe she would never know what happened to the quiet child who had become such an important part of her life. The morning customers came and went as usual. Pete ordered his eggs and complained about the weather. Mrs. Henderson read her newspaper and sipped her tea. Everything was normal except for the empty space where the boy should have been sitting, carefully counting his pennies for toast. Around 10:30, Lucy was refilling the coffee machine when she heard a sound that made her freeze. It was low and rhythmic, growing louder by the second, the distinctive whop-whop-whop of helicopter blades cutting through the air. She looked out the window and saw other people on Main Street stopping and pointing upward. The sound grew louder and louder until it seemed to shake the entire building. Lucy had never heard helicopters this close to town before. Millfield was too small and quiet for that kind of excitement. Then she saw them. 2 large military helicopters appeared over the rooftops, dark green with official markings on their sides. They circled once over the center of town before heading straight for the diner's parking lot. Lucy's hands began to shake as she watched them descend, their powerful rotors whipping up snow and debris into small tornadoes. "What in the world?" Pete muttered, standing up from his booth to get a better look. Mrs. Henderson had abandoned her newspaper entirely, pressing her face to the window like a child. "Are we being invaded?" she asked, only half joking. The helicopters touched down in the parking lot with military precision. Through the swirling snow and wind, Lucy could see figures in dark uniforms climbing out. They moved with purpose and authority, like people who were used to handling important situations. Lucy's mind raced through possibilities. Was there some kind of emergency? A terrorist threat? Had something terrible happened that she didn't know about? Her hands trembled as she watched the uniformed figures approach the diner. The door chimed as 3 people entered. 2 were clearly military. A tall man with short gray hair wearing a uniform covered in medals and a younger woman in similar dress. The third person wore a plain dark suit and carried a briefcase, looking like a government lawyer or official. The entire diner fell silent. Pete and Mrs. Henderson stared openly. Even Bob poked his head out of the kitchen to see what was happening. Lucy stood frozen behind the counter, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The older military man looked around the diner until his eyes settled on Lucy. He approached the counter with slow, deliberate steps, and when he spoke, his voice was kind but serious. "Are you Lucy?" Lucy's mouth went dry. How did he know her name? Why were military officials looking for her specifically? Her mind jumped to worst-case scenarios. Had she done something wrong? Was she in trouble for feeding the boy without paying for all that extra food? "Yes, sir," she managed to whisper. "My name is General Harrison," the man said, removing his hat. "This is Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez, and this is Agent Thompson from Child Protective Services. We need to speak with you about a young boy who has been visiting your establishment." Lucy's knees nearly gave out. Child Protective Services. They knew about the boy. Someone had reported her for giving him food. Maybe they thought she was trying to take advantage of him somehow. Her mind raced with panic. "I can explain," she started, her voice shaking. "I was just trying to help him. He was so thin, and he only ever ordered toast, and I thought—" General Harrison held up a gentle hand. "Ma'am, you're not in any trouble. In fact, quite the opposite. May we sit down? What I have to tell you is going to be difficult to believe." Lucy nodded numbly and led them to a large booth in the back, away from the curious stares of the other customers. Her legs felt like jelly as she sat down across from the three officials. Agent Thompson opened her briefcase and pulled out several official-looking documents. "The boy you've been caring for," General Harrison began. "His name is David Chen. He's 10 years old, and until 3 days ago, he was living with his grandmother in Sunset Trailer Park." Lucy's heart clenched. Was living? What happened? Is he okay? "He's safe and well cared for now," Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez assured her. "But his grandmother, Dr. Elena Chen, passed away peacefully in her sleep on Monday night." Lucy felt tears spring to her eyes. No wonder the boy hadn't come to the diner. He had lost the only family he had left, the only person taking care of him. "Where is he now? Is someone looking after him?" "That's why we're here," General Harrison said. "Dr. Elena Chen wasn't just any grandmother, Lucy. She was one of the most brilliant scientists this country has ever produced. She worked on classified government projects for over 30 years before she retired." Lucy blinked in confusion. Scientists? But she lived in a trailer park. She was on Social Security. Agent Thompson leaned forward. "Dr. Chen was living under an assumed identity for the past 2 years. She had received some threats related to her previous work, so the government helped relocate her and her grandson to ensure their safety. The trailer park was perfect camouflage. No one would think to look for a renowned scientist there." "But why are you telling me this?" Lucy asked, still struggling to understand. General Harrison's expression softened. "Because before Dr. Chen died, she spent considerable time observing this diner. She would sit in her car across the street and watch through the windows. She saw how you treated David, how you fed him, how you cared for him, how you protected his dignity while making sure he didn't go hungry." Lucy's mind reeled. The boy's grandmother had been watching her? "I don't understand." "Dr. Chen left very specific instructions," Agent Thompson said, pulling out a thick legal document. "She was incredibly impressed by your kindness to a stranger. She saw that you never made David feel like charity case, never embarrassed him, never asked for anything in return. She said you treated him like family." Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez added, "Dr. Chen also told us something else about David. The boy isn't just quiet because of trauma, though that's certainly part of it. He's also extraordinarily gifted intellectually. His IQ tests show he's operating at a genius level, much like his grandmother." Lucy's head was spinning. The quiet boy who counted pennies for toast was a genius? His grandmother was a famous scientist who had been secretly watching Lucy's every move. "There's more," General Harrison said gently. "Dr. Chen made a very unusual request in her will. She specifically asked that if anything happened to her, we were to find you and ask if you would consider becoming David's legal guardian." The words hit Lucy like a physical blow. "Guardian, me? But I'm nobody special. I'm just a waitress. I can barely pay my own bills." Agent Thompson smiled for the first time since entering the diner. "Dr. Chen anticipated you might say that. She left detailed notes about why she chose you. She said that in all her years of observing human behavior, she had rarely seen such consistent, selfless kindness. She said David needed someone who would love him unconditionally, not because of his intelligence, but because of who he is as a person." Lucy felt tears streaming down her face. "Where is he now? Is he okay? Does he know his grandmother is gone?" "He's staying in a temporary foster facility about an hour from here," General Harrison explained. "He knows about his grandmother and he's been asking for you. He keeps saying he needs to come back to the diner, that Lucy will be worried about him. The realization hit Lucy like a wave. The boy had been thinking about her, too. Even in his grief and confusion, he had been concerned about her feelings. "I want to see him," she said without hesitation. "Before you make any decisions about guardianship," Agent Thompson said carefully, "there's something else you need to know. Dr. Chen was quite wealthy from her years of government contracts and patents. She's left a substantial trust fund for David's care and education. If you agree to become his guardian, you would also become the administrator of that fund. You would never have to worry about money again." Lucy stared at them in shock. In the span of 15 minutes, her entire world had turned upside down. The boy she had been feeding scraps to was actually a brilliant child with a secret past and a substantial inheritance. His scientist grandmother had been watching Lucy's every move and had chosen her, a struggling waitress, to raise this exceptional child. It was impossible, unbelievable, like something from a movie. But as Lucy thought about those serious dark eyes and the way the boy had quietly helped around the diner, she realized that none of the money or the revelations mattered. What mattered was that somewhere, a child she had come to love was alone and scared, needing someone who cared about him. "Can I see him today?" she asked, her voice stronger now. General Harrison smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that. The helicopter is waiting whenever you're ready." Lucy had never been in a helicopter before. As they lifted off from the diner's parking lot, she pressed her face to the small window and watched Millfield shrink below them. The town looked like a toy village from up here, with Rosie's Diner just a tiny red dot on Main Street. Her stomach fluttered from nervousness and the unfamiliar sensation of flying. General Harrison sat across from her, speaking into a headset over the noise of the rotors. Agent Thompson had stayed behind to handle paperwork, but Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez sat beside Lucy, offering quiet reassurance during the flight. "He's been asking about you constantly," Rodriguez told her through her own headset. "The Foster family says he barely speaks to anyone, but he keeps asking when he can go back to see Lucy at the diner." Lucy's heart ached thinking about David alone and confused, not understanding why his whole world had suddenly changed. She clutched her purse tightly, inside which she had hastily packed 2 sandwiches and some fruit. Old habits that made her feel like she was bringing something useful to offer. The flight took about 40 minutes. They landed at a government facility that looked more like a school than anything official or scary. Children were playing in a fenced yard, and Lucy could see adults supervising activities through large windows. It looked warm and safe, but she knew it wasn't home for David. Inside, they were greeted by a kind woman named Mrs. Patterson, who explained that David had been staying in their emergency care wing. "He's a remarkable child," she said as they walked down hallways lined with children's artwork. "Very polite, very quiet. He's been reading constantly. Books that most adults would find challenging." Lucy's hands trembled as they approached a room at the end of the hall. Through a small window in the door, she could see David sitting at a small table, bent over what looked like a thick science book. He wore clothes that were clean and new, but clearly from a donation pile. Nothing fit quite right, and he looked smaller somehow. Mrs. Patterson knocked gently and opened the door. "David, you have a visitor." David looked up from his book, and when he saw Lucy, his whole face transformed. His serious expression melted into something close to joy, and he stood up so quickly his chair almost fell over. "Lucy," he said, and then stopped, looking surprised at himself. Those were the first words Lucy had ever heard him speak. His voice was soft and a little hoarse from disuse, but it was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. "Hi, sweetheart," Lucy said, kneeling down to his level. "I've been so worried about you." David ran to her and threw his arms around her neck, holding on like he was afraid she might disappear. Lucy could feel him trembling, and she held him tightly, stroking his hair and murmuring gentle words. "I'm sorry I didn't come to the diner," David whispered into her shoulder. "Grandma got sick, and then these people came and they said I couldn't go home anymore." Lucy's throat tightened with emotion. "Oh, honey, you don't need to apologize for anything. None of this is your fault." They sat together on the small bed, and David stayed close to Lucy's side like he was afraid she might leave. General Harrison explained the situation in simple terms that David could understand, while Lucy held his hand and offered reassurance. "The thing is, David," General Harrison said gently, "your grandmother made some very special arrangements before she passed away. She wanted to make sure you would be taken care of by someone who truly cares about you." David looked between the general and Lucy with confusion. "What kind of arrangements?" Lucy took a deep breath. "David, how would you feel about coming to live with me? Not just visiting the diner, but actually being part of my family." David's eyes widened. "You mean like forever?" "If that's what you want," Lucy said softly. "I know I'm not your grandmother, and I know this is all very scary and confusing, but I care about you very much and I would love to take care of you if you'll let me." David was quiet for a long moment, thinking with the same serious expression Lucy had seen him wear when counting his pennies for toast. Finally, he looked up at her with those dark, intelligent eyes. "Would I still be able to help at the diner?" he asked. Lucy laughed through her tears. "Every day if you want to. In fact, I'm going to need all the help I can get." General Harrison spent the next hour explaining the practical details. The trust fund that Dr. Chen had left would cover David's education, healthcare, and living expenses, with enough left over to ensure Lucy never had to worry about money again. There would be regular check-ins from social services, but they were just formalities. Dr. Chen's will had been very thorough and legally sound. "Your grandmother also left you something else," Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez said, pulling a small wrapped package from her briefcase. "She wanted you to have this when you found your new family." David unwrapped the package carefully. Inside was a small leather journal filled with his grandmother's handwriting and a letter addressed to him. Lucy watched as he read the letter silently, his lips moving slightly with the words. When he finished, David looked up with tears in his eyes. "Grandma says she watched Lucy take care of me, and she knew Lucy had a good heart. She says she's not sad because she knows I'll be loved." Lucy had to look away to compose herself. The idea that this brilliant woman had observed her simple acts of kindness and deemed her worthy of raising her precious grandson was overwhelming. The paperwork took several more hours, but by late afternoon, they were ready to leave. David had packed his few belongings in a small backpack, mostly books and the new clothes the facility had provided. As they prepared to board the helicopter for the return trip, he turned to Mrs. Patterson. "Thank you for taking care of me," he said politely. "And thank you for letting Lucy come to see me." The flight back to Millfield was different. David sat between Lucy and Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez, looking out the window with curiosity rather than fear. He asked questions about how helicopters worked, and Rodriguez was happy to explain the mechanics of flight. When they landed back at the diner, a small crowd had gathered. Word had spread through the town about the morning's dramatic events. Pete was there, along with Mrs. Henderson and several other regular customers. Even Bob had come out of the kitchen to watch. As they climbed out of the helicopter, David instinctively moved closer to Lucy. She put her arm around his shoulders, protectively, suddenly aware that their quiet, private world was about to become very public. "Is this him?" Mrs. Henderson asked softly. "The boy you've been taking care of?" Lucy nodded, feeling David press closer to her side. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet David. David, these are my friends from the diner." Pete stepped forward with a warm smile. "Nice to officially meet you, son. I've seen you helping Lucy with the tables. You do good work." David looked up at Lucy uncertainly, then back at Pete. "Thank you, sir," he said quietly. One by one, the small crowd welcomed David with the gentle warmth that small-town people show to children in need. Mrs. Henderson promised to bring him books from her personal library. Bob grumbled that he could use another pair of hands in the kitchen, but his eyes were kind. As the helicopters prepared to leave and the crowd dispersed, Lucy and David stood together in the diner's parking lot. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange.